Okay guys, Season 9 of Death Battle is officially over. Honestly, this has been, in terms of quality, one of the best in recent memory. Seriously, just looking at it that way, there hasn't been a single bad episode in the ranks, and each one is really good in a lot of ways, and even the lesser ones put bad ones from past seasons like Black Canary vs. Sindel or Bad Girl vs. Spider-Gwen to shame. Still, there is going to be better episodes here, and I'm going to try to find out which one is the best in my first ranking of a Death Battle season. Not 5 stops. Could be fun. I do want to clarify that quality isn't the only factor here. Things like my personal experiences with the characters, the logic behind the results, character bias, music, and a bunch more stuff comes into play here. And most importantly, which one I'd go back to re-watch the most. Which includes the bonus episode, because it is literally just a bonus episode. There's like nothing different about it, aside from the jokes and stuff like that. Another thing I want to clarify is these are my opinions, and they're pretty controversial all things considered. So don't be mad and or confused when, say, Nemesis Blood Rife or The Raptors' favorite episode isn't going to be on this list as number 1. But enough chit-chat. Kick back, feet slack, grab a snack, and hold on to your hat for my ranking of Season 9 of Death Battle. This will probably piss off a good deal of you guys in the comments, and rightfully so in some cases. But one had to be the bottom, and for me, it isn't a contest. Make no mistake, this episode isn't quote-unquote bad. If you were to switch things up to direct quality and nothing else, I'd probably switch this up to number 12 or something. But more stuff comes into my opinion on something. So, let's get the positives out of the way to understand the negatives. Both the voice actors for both sounded really good in screaming and performance, and the fights sold speed and power well in multiple places, and the track is really freaking good. Strongest Alive is, in my opinion, a pretty good successor to Mighty, even though it's kind of repetitive at times, and there's not really any, things separating it from other tracks this year. Now, the bad stuff. The analysis, while informative, are painfully unfunny. Not many this year are actually funny, but this one tries and actually makes it worse with cringe jokes and boring cutaway gags. Still, my main problems lie with the fight itself. Starting off, it's really janky and unnatural in a lot of places, and it gets repetitive really fast. Up until the sneak peek ended, I was fine, but after, Deku spams Detroit Smash, which he doesn't need to, considering he has way more techniques to combo instead of just one specific move. Asta goes into his black form, fights Sek with Deku, who doesn't increase his power to do this, by the way. Deku goes all out, and then Asta steals a win. This kind of plays into a really big problem here. I don't know how to put this into words, but it disrespects both Deku and Asta in a lot of ways here, dragging the fight down with it. So, the rundowns, as always, bring up all the stuff they do, like Deku's quirks and one for all buffs, and Asta's swords and anti-magic powers. Asta gets to do a lot, using all of his swords and a few separate techniques, but Deku just gets screwed. He gets to use 2 named techniques for him, and 5 of his quirks, a lot of which only once and for a split second, which is not how he usually fights. A lot of which aren't even obvious until I looked at the DB wiki. He uses Danger Sense, Black Whip, Smoke Screen, Gear Shift, and debatably Fajin. That and how Deku is portrayed is my biggest problem. They didn't respect Deku as a character. Sure, they portrayed Asta like an idiot anime stereotype, which I'm pretty sure he's not, given how a lot of people have told me that he's really pretty intelligent and a honorable fighter in person, along with being, an actual teenager who doesn't relish in the opportunity to kill people. But look at what they said about Deku. They hype him up as a super smart guy who worked to earn his power, then utilize a variety of techniques to own new powers, all of which he uses in conjunction to be the best warrior he can be. including focusing on his legs because of all the damage done to his arms. Now look at what he does in the battle. He zips around, uses his quirks once, not stockpiling them or very intelligently, mind you, like he does in the manga, save for that time he saw the swords with Blackwood, which is kind of just something anybody could do. And he punches like 99% more than he actually kicks, never really using more than his power to win or anything like that. Heck, they even have him kick the crap out of Asta, match Black Asta blow for blow without using any of his strength-inducing one-for-all stuff like Fajin or Gear Shift, then get hit once and power up for the first time in the fight, hitting Asta with a 1,000,000% punch after none of his limbs are damaged, and then maybe die from doing so? This is my main problem. They did not respect Deku's progression as a fighter and protagonist. He folds Asta for most of the fight, and then uses his full power once without any of his quirks boosting it up, and apparently dies from that. Not only is that incredibly inconsistent with his power and feats, it's flat out disrespectful to treat him that way. Don't believe me? In his fight with Muscular, correct me if I'm wrong, he broke his arms and pushed himself to the brink for multiple minutes in order to stop him and save Koda, and then used his 1,000,000% smash while he was already pushing himself to stop Muscular, and he didn't die from that. Or pass out, if I remember correctly. So explain to me why he would now, especially after using that power and multiple power boosting quirks which increase the strain for multiple minutes in the manga, which you know they saw. They put Gear Shift in the fight when the chapter came out like 2 months earlier. So there's that, and then the death. Asta got literally overpowered and beaten anime style, which is what they were in, like all the tournaments and all that. People have told me that Asta is a good person who wouldn't do this in a real fight. He can sense emotions with his ki, and he generally wouldn't do this. Along with the notion that it wasn't a Mortal Kombat style fight because all Deku wanted to do was just knock him down. Hence why he said, I did it at the end. Obviously, no, he didn't kill him. So why on earth does Asta just decide to kill Deku for no reason? That death is stupid, and then they make it a Family Guy meme and don't even have Asta respect Deku or acknowledge that death was the last thing on his mind, considering, again, he can actually sense your emotions and whatnot. Then the results came in and applied the anime power progression to Asta, but not to Deku. Not only all that made me hate the fight and an explanation, but the community did not make it any easier. I argued and was belittled / hated on just for thinking Deku wins, even when the researchers themselves said it was a close fight, and I wanted Deku to win and I thought he would. But people just couldn't accept that. No cap, I've had this one idiot say not only Deku would lose, but call him a suicidal idiot who deserves to die to Asta, and when I said that's not the case, that idiot told me to hide and crawl back in my hole fanboy. That's just one guy, and there were many more for me just for thinking that Deku would win. So for the fight to throw away any possibility of respect for Deku and do the same for Asta in a lot of ways that I'm not that mad about since I don't know him, and now I have no desire to because of all the Black Clover fanboys being douches in my comments. And then they pull that stupid death with no reasoning or logic, then cap it off with another Detroit joke, and say Asta wins because of past upscaling but not apply it to Deku, and then compile that with everybody who made me feel like crap for weeks, and longer still for people who just won't shut up even after the episode dropped, even making that video my most viewed, dozens of people coming back after the episode ended just to make fun of me for being wrong, and that episode just hurts to watch. Before you say I'm just being salty that Deku lost, I wanted Hercules to beat Sun Wukong, for instance, but that didn't impact my verdict here because at least they didn't portray Hercules like an idiot who should have won in the context of the fight. I have no desire to rewatch it and only want to leave it behind me. Do not try to argue with me about any results or versus stuff about this. I'm tired of this episode and I just want to leave it behind me for good until both characters get a match that gives them the respect they deserve. Okay, back to episodes I can watch without physically and emotionally hurting. Scarlet Witch vs. Zatanna is certainly the episode of all time. It's not a bad match, and it's not like it didn't need to happen, it's just kind of there for me. The rundowns for both were fine, though not funny, which with Cape characters dragging the episode down pretty fast is a must. Fight, well, I think the premise is okay, even though Zatanna is kind of a douche here. A mega powerful witch gets accidentally teleported to your show because of the mistake you made, and she rightfully calls you out on it, and you attack, toy with, and kill her. Yeah, very hero-like Zatanna. Both of them sounded pretty good, and Zatanna especially, though Wanda was a tad heavy on the accent, but nothing major. The track complemented the fight pretty well, but it's not exactly something I would listen to outside of it because of the whole thematic nature they were going for. Just my preferences for a song. The fight itself was pretty good, and they got to do a lot of their powers, though it felt like they could have done more, but with all the crap they can do, I guess that's kind of a given. Wanda got to fly, use telekinesis, summon backup, warp reality, grow in size, and shoot energy. Zatanna got to teleport stuff, summon chains, turn into rabbits, summon backup, make shields, fly, grow in size, and do the saw trick. That's decent enough, all things considered. But with all the time and space crap they mentioned in the analysis, a bit more would have been better. What we actually got was about as wacky and out of scale as I expected, but stuff like the Super Pokemon battle and presentation were also amazing. The death was cool too. I don't know, I just don't really like this episode, but I don't dislike it either. It just kind of blanded in my eyes. Not that it's bad, it's just not my cup of tea. Well, this episode came out of nowhere. After the jumble of comics and anime, we got the first ever mythological death battle between two characters of unparalleled fame and power, basically the OG Goku vs. Superman. I grew up loving to read Greek myths like Hercules, and I knew Sun because I'm a nerd and because Lego. How'd the episode go? Well, both the analysis did pretty good with their backstories and powers, almost framing it more like a story than anything else, and going over some of the most unique stuff this season. Sun's even made me laugh with the deadpan expectation that he'd eat something to make him immortal again. And the fight? Well, it was pretty cool and unique as well. The ink hits from Street Fighter really made it feel like a story, same with the scroll aspect of narration. Herc and Wukong also had pretty good voices, which is, yeah, Wukong had a better voice. The animation was really smooth, and there were a few cool lines from both, but at the same time some lame ones, like Herc just saying who he is without reason or context or anything, just saying, "I am Heracles," because that means anything. Or Sun just saying what he did and how he won. It's not too bad. The track also fit pretty well, but like with Wanda vs. Zatanna, I wouldn't give it a watch outside of the fight. Overall, it's pretty much in the same boat as Wanda vs. Zatanna. It's a good episode, I just don't really like it that much. But this one has slightly better in stuff like voices and fight material, and my investment in Herc or the interest of learning all the stuff Wukong could do. Still a good episode, but not really a rewatchable one for me. Okay. I'm sorry. This episode is really dang good, but I just don't have that big of an attachment to either world or character. The closest is me seeing both the Middle-earth movie series, but they were still really boring to me throughout. This episode is probably way better if you understand the characters, and I don't really have that much investment in the Lich King, and I just think Sauron's cool, that's it. Still, it was nice to see him. Both the rundowns were fairly decent, and Boomstick freaking eating the ring was pretty funny. But Arthas's felt really dragging, and neither really captured my interest. Unfortunately, the fight didn't do much better. Philip once again kicked butt as Arthas and started Sauron's voice. even though he was a noob to the show. Get it? And both had really cool lines and comebacks for each other. Sauron sounded really ethereal and eldritch, which worked really well, while Lich King got more pissed old beast lines. The fight was animated pretty good, and they got to use a lot of cool powers, but it just felt way too slow to me, and sure, that's kind of a given here. But slow fights just rarely are, like, my preferred over a season. If you can't back it up with a good track or make me interested in the characters, it's going to fall pretty flat, and that's what happened here. It's not the episode's fault, I just was pretty bored throughout it. The music is just like the last two, and everything else is okay, and the ending's kind of weird though. Couldn't they have had like Sauron punch Frost more with the One Ring to see who was stronger, because the one who would lose the clash would die anyway? Nah, it's not too big of a deal. I just don't have much of an attachment to either, and couldn't enjoy this as much as, say, Nemesis Bloodwrath or Matthew to Leave It did. And it's above because, well, I couldn't bear putting it above. Wait, no, sorry, below the other ones. I wonder how many people are going to want to murder me now that I have this above Sauron versus Lich King. Meh, I don't care, I can handle them. You know, I just now realized that this is my 13th favorite of this season. Funny joke. So, this is one of the episodes with the most wasted potential in my opinion. But hey, pretty much no long-awaited match like this lives up to the hype. Except for Link vs. Cloud. So, I'll cut it some slack and look at this as just an episode that should have been live action. The rundown for each killer was really good, highlighting just how crazy and unstoppable these two are, along with the eldritch horror that they are, and really good music choices and not too bad cutaway gags. This also is less structured like a death battle episode and more like a scary story, which actually makes it a bit better with the characters being taken out one at a time and the horror music. The fight itself is, well, it sure is a fight. The models for both look fine, though I don't know why they didn't just use Jason's Mortal Kombat model, and the music suits it pretty well, though yet again, I wouldn't listen to it outside the fight, at all. Sure, Michael and Jason rarely fight, but the moments they do are pretty fast-paced and epic, even though it doesn't really fit with the characters. Still, there is one gaping problem here that drags the few good stuff this episode has down. Joe Victim. Look guys, I get that horror movies have idiot teens, but this guy just takes the cake in all the worst ways. He shouts at the top of his lungs in a dark forest, runs past a literal axe, and lets Michael grab it, and then lets the eternally slow Michael catch him by just standing still, not even looking behind him, just a while back after he ran away from him. And then he runs backwards to where he just saw Michael pin Jason to a tree, except now the knife is gone. Good touch, by the way. And he just hides and tries to go to his car. And then after Jason gets him again and he somehow survives that, and then they fight, he runs like 3 feet away to a gravestone and hides behind it thinking he's safe and doesn't expect them to kill him. Yeah, that was expected. The bits Michael and Jason do have to fight are really well animated, and the really good bit is the ending. Jason freaking catches Michael's axe with zero effort, and then Michael casually yanks a gravestone out of the ground and bashes his head in with it so hard it breaks. And then we get a cool comeback moment where Michael tries to bury Jason's head in the axe with his foot. And we get a cool comeback from Jason, of all people, from his mom, even seeing a close-up on his eyes to highlight his leftover humanity in incredibly gory and brutal fashion, along with an unnecessary long walking away scene. Overall, it's pretty decent, just dragging down by the wasted potential, and it could have been better in a lot of ways, like how it should have been live action, like everybody else says. and we shouldn't have had all the fight focused on Joe Victim, but it could have been way worse. Really, the only reason it isn't is because I really enjoyed the analysis, and either way, at least this wasn't Sprite. That would have been scary. Okay, now I've probably lost all my viewers for having it above Sauron vs. Lich King. So, this episode was, well, a bit of a sore spot for me for a while. All of the Season 9 revealed people had shown up, and all that was left was Boba in a super predictable match that I really didn't hope they would end up doing as the mid-season finale. Seriously. Every single guy they revealed fought exactly who we thought, and I was dreading Fett vs. Predator because I thought it'd be super boring. Was I right? Well, the rundowns for both weren't anything special, but again, most of these days aren't. The fight was, well, it was pretty friggin' awesome. The preview was pretty janky and stiff, but again, most of these days are. But yeah, most of these days are anyway. After that, it really picked up. Like, the SFM team has had some rough rides from here to the abomination of Akuma versus Shao Kahn, but they really improved, and it shows here. The up-close action is really fast and smooth, and I don't see many problems with the animation aside from the Predator's dish towel hair and cardboard hair switching around. Choreography is pretty nice too, and the weapon switching does flow pretty well even if the weapons do come out of nowhere. Kamran Nikrad, if that's how you say his name, also did a really good job as Fett, and I just now realized he managed to nail one of the most awesome Star Wars characters, video game villains, and Mario. Nice job, bro. I also like the bit of cutting Boba's arm off because early on we just see that he isn't invincible, and right now he's being hunted. And so he fights for the rest of it with strategy and trickery and unnecessary but cool ugly Mother Hubber line. And that's not even getting into him cauterizing his wound with a freaking lightsaber. Raw as The action throughout was pretty good, and it was complemented more by the track, If It Bleeds. It feels a lot like the spiritual successor to Dio vs. Alucard's track, though a bit more primal and deadly to fit Predator and Fett. Sure, there's a whole non-listening thing, but everything else the fight brings more than makes up for it. Overall, it's really good, especially after how much I was dreading its predictable existence. The reason it's higher than the ones before is that it's the best looking out of the animations save Sauron vs. Lich King, and it's got more great stuff in every area that fell flat for me, making this one hunt you will be kind of okay if you miss. Well, this was my first rant on why an episode shouldn't exist, where I really sounded how petty and childish I can be sometimes. And the first time I didn't give a moral high ground or anything, I was just pissed we got the episode over all other options. So, was I right? In short, kind of. The rundowns for both were fine, though the fact that they are basically the same dude made it repetitive. Except for the in-universe debate they went over, which was a nice touch to make it more interesting. I like Gogeta's a tad more due to the Wildo joke, and how it wasn't what made the episode repetitive, it was Vegeto's following it. But that's just how they were placed, so I'll probably feel the same if Vegeto came toward Gogeta. No real biggie. The fight, well, let's go positives and negatives. Lenny Pator returned again to bring an amazing performance as Vegeta, and Michael Kovac did decent as Goku, yet a bit bad at the same time, but I'll get to that later. The track though, that slaps as hard as Drac did to Ganon back in Season 6. Lyrical lore by itself, having references to even other Death Battle tracks like Princess of Pride and one of my all-time favorites, Alive, it was amazing. The fight itself though, that's what drags it down. Firstly, it has absolutely shite pacing. One sec they're based, the next Super Saiyan 1, then Super Saiyan Blue /4, and then Super Saiyan Blue for Gogeta, even though they already said Super Saiyan 4 was equal. Like, I get you have to go to higher forms, but there are other ways to progress than just jump to all the ones fans expect. Trunks didn't have that problem. He wanted to Super Saiyan to stop a strong attack and then jump straight to Super Saiyan God when it was clear Silver was getting the upper hand, as Trunks would, if I understand him right. Here, it's just too fast, and I don't mean actual speed. I mean this feels like a 3-minute melee or something. But minus all the good stuff, yeah. I mentioned Kovac did a good job, but I don't really like his Goku performance here or as Goku Black. That's probably just me. He just doesn't really sound like Sean Schemmel to me. But Laney's better performance made both sound more like Vegeta than Gogeta or Vegito. But that's just a minor nitpick. Actual stuff that happens, pretty standard, but after the first watch, it just lacks sustenance. That's the main problem here. This feels more like a bonus episode and Dragon Ball Anniversary type thing than a finale, lacking any real enjoyment for someone like me, who is only a casual fan with no experience watching the show outside of clips and a bridge. A finale should close out the year with an episode reasonably above all the rest in potential, scale, budget, all that stuff to just prove it deserves to have a finale. But this is kind of just fan service for dead Dragon Ball fans to appease them for year-long grudges that they really shouldn't be having anymore. It doesn't feel like it closed out the year to me, it just feels like a normal episode. The Dragon voice acting is pretty good, but the rest of it is just stereotypical Dragon Ball favoritism, which is why I was so pissed when it got revealed and why I just don't care for it now. What a shame. Like, bro, Giorno versus Joker was right there. Coming from a guy who thinks both had better, this episode turned out really well, all things considered. It's a classic rivalry, and it brought in two of the most famous movie characters in recent memory, and more, movie characters, in really good fashion. The rundowns for both were really fun and interesting for me to learn about and see all the crazy stuff they get up to, with focus not only on their weapons, armor, and skills, but also their backstories and personalities in a really well-rounded and paced analysis each. I think Bonds was a bit better, but Wicks also highlighted just how broken he is without making either look too favored by the writers. The actual fight started rough, but that just made the later stuff all the better. First, the voice acting. Both Stephen Kelly and Mortal did really good as James and John, especially in the screaming category for John to sell the really guttural effect he has. Also, Liam, you mad lad. First Popeye, now Q. Keep it up, my boy. Secret Service also fit really well with plenty of catchy jazzy parts, even though it was kind of biased towards Bond. But him having better music is kind of excused for that. The actual fight started really janky, but it picked up right after, and the SFN team got the chance to shine hand-to-hand once again, especially in the knife fight near the end. This also gave both John and Wick some of the best moments of the season of sheer badassery. From John kicking James' teeth in multiple times, to charging forward with multiple bullet wounds, to Bond recreating his movie intro by turning around before Wick can shoot him, to shoot through the barrel of his gun and into his chest like an absolute boss. They even gave Wick respect in his death by having him just accept it, like he probably would. Let's also not skim over how they name-dropped every single 007 movie in 20 minutes. Absolute freaking mad lads. The conclusion also highlighted just how close this was really well, and wrapped up the piece with the one last Bond. James Bond. It's actually a lot like Boba vs. Predator, but better in almost every way that matters when deciding if I was to rewatch it. But even more, it makes me wish Death Battle did more fights like it. And hope Ethan Hunt can get on the show one day. Okay, please don't leave, I swear this is just my opinion. This episode does a lot of things better than most others this season, but a lot worse at the same time. The rundowns for both were really good in most regards, of making things feel fresh for pretty standard characters, sure, but it still wasn't really funny, and Thor's in particular suffers by barely talking about his character, just all of his feats that really don't need to be brought up. You could just say he's got super strength and not bring up him throwing up a planet when he can bust universes later. And Vegeta's is fine in most regards, and the fight is too, because Vegeta's got to talk about his character and his powers. Thor does kind of act like a douche, and he did kind of kill Vegeta for no reason, but it is Vegeta. I'm pretty sure he'd totally pick a fight over a guy toying with a hammer in front of him. Speaking of, Lanny, as I said earlier, returned as Vegeta in one of the best voice performances of the season. Don't think Jonah Scott didn't do a ass performance as Thor either. Both got to show off really cool lines, guttural screams, and knock their previous performances out of the water. The action and fighting also has speed and power in spades, and the environment was used really creatively. Princess of Pride fit really well too, and it's the first track here besides Strongest Alive I've listened to on my own. So, what's the problem? Well, the episode just bores me when it really shouldn't. I love both characters, but their rundowns don't really bring anything new to the table besides a few new powers, and both just feel like more generic comic and anime power lists that fun or charming rundowns, like earlier episodes in the season. The track is pretty good, but not really my cup of tea in a fight, and in the fight, which is more of a hit hard the rapid combo kind of thing, it stays the same kind of slow pace I don't like in comic anime fights, and they just don't capture my attention without a catchy track, which again, the track emulates the fight. It just makes me the same way throughout, but granted, this is just my personal opinion as a tired fan having comics and anime shoved in my face. But this really isn't bad, just where I'd place it in the ranking. How about that next time though? For those who expected it or didn't, I don't think any of us wanted this. This certainly is an episode. Despite both having better options, it probably should have happened sooner rather than later before the show really got into just how badly Omni-Man collapsed Homelander. How to go? Well, I really enjoyed both the analysis, surprisingly, which were both intuitive, fresh intake from all the energy beams and superpowers with new ways to use them, as well as going over the interesting worlds of two of the most popular comic series right now that aren't Marvel or DC. The real strength, though, is that both are actually really funny. With Nolan's sass jokes, deadpan reveals that both are psycho murderers, and the bust a nut joke that made me bust a gut laughing, the fact that they actually looked up and used how fast Homelander can blast off as a speed feat instead of, his actual feats is hilarious in concept. And so is the delivery of Wiz going like, consider humans, load. Good times. The fight also was really well animated in almost every way, and complemented much more by the music, even though it's got a weird title. Both voice actors also nailed it. Tom Schalk did excellent as Omni-Man, but Yang Ye just knocked it out of the park as Homelander, selling his cockiness, mannerisms, and just chilling nature. And, being a fudging child throwing a tantrum when he gets his shit rocked. That actually was one of the most interesting things here, and one of its main flaws as well. Omni-Man wiping the floor with and toying with Homelander. It was cathartic seeing a big fish in a small pond meet a king of the jungle and get the first real time he was shown what it was like to be weak. Omni-Man even tried to coach him on how to fight mid-battle. Talk about brutal. Same with that nightmarish death, which was totally deserved and expected for doing that to Debbie. Like I said, still, the whole stomp aspect only carries this so far. The fight itself only lasts about 2 minutes thanks to the long intro, and the entirety of it is shown making Homelander as pathetic as he is compared to Nolan, not even getting a scream out of him, and making this whole thing feel way shorter than it should be. I get it's a stomp and you have a budget, but don't just reserve 2 minutes for a literal stomp that just kind of stays the same until the death. It's just kind of there for me, held up by the good rundowns, animation, and voice acting, but held back by how straightforward and uninteresting the rest of it is. Hey, Death Battle. If you don't want another Lex Luthor versus Doctor Doom when you do another comic episode, just do something like this. I unfortunately got spoiled for this episode and didn't get to really appreciate all the good stuff this fight has on the first watch, but upon a real one, I did really like it. Neither analysis shoves in lame jokes too much to weigh it down, except for that stupid zoo one, focusing more on the characters than the show aspect, and it really makes this more bearable than most of the season. The only problem they have is it doesn't really give direct feats or cover most of Apocalypse's powers besides the basics, but the fight more than picks up the slack. Now, whenever Death Battle uses big, hefty, villainous characters like Venom, Thanos, or Shao Kahn, they use slow tracks to emulate the characters, and that often bogs down my ranking because of how boring it makes the fight. If you want me to, like, rank your fight good, then just have banger music. So I was expecting a slow and boring track. Yeah, that didn't happen here. Fallen Gods has a really catchy beat, and SWAT and Sparks did a really good job on it, especially in the chorus, making the fight much more fast-paced and fluid than that slow-ass Akuma vs. Shao Kahn did. And since the track carries the fight's tone and aspects, you better believe it's got stellar animation, with no real problems or errors that come to mind other than it should have been longer, and it kind of favored Apocalypse. Still, based on the results and what he was doing, it's not totally wrong. And those results. I freaking love it when the guy I want to win is said to lose by the community, but pulls off a comeback at the last minute. And this one pulled it off excellently with the most brutal kill in years. And I don't just mean violence. Apocalypse hurt this man so bad he literally could not get up, and then gave him the Green Lantern treatment with a shit-eating grin and laughing multiple times until he looks like that. But he left him alive to bash in the fact that he failed. Your city, your legacy, your entire character's development, I'm going to burn it to ash because you were too weak to save it. Let that sink in. Oh wait, you can't, because I'm going to finally kill you with your own powers and then toss you away like trash. Jeez. This is only brought up by Wolf and Kamran's really good performance as Apocalypse and Adam, though I'd have to give it to Wolf more times than not on who I'd prefer. The animation also got over my main problem in Marvel vs. DC, how repetitive they get. Apocalypse got to use a lot of his powers and get really cool shots and lines, and so did Adam, all backed by amazing music, voice acting, and animation. And it took all the things I criticized about normal villain matches, flipped them on their head, and let me have hope for the future of villain fights. Basically, Omni-Man vs. Homelander, but better in every way of the fight. Not so much in the analysis, though. You're never beating the busted nut good joke. Talk about setting expectations for the year. This episode was not really on my most wanted, or wanted at all, and I was just watching it for the next time. But it still proved to be really good. Neither rundown was very funny, but they were really interesting and flowed really well, going over their weapons and character arcs, especially for Harley. The really amazing here though is the fight. It's animated better than pretty much every other 3D fight this season, and it doesn't stop there. Remember how me and everybody else gave the SFM team a rough time because of stuff like Akuma vs. Shao Kahn? Well, this episode was the first solely 3D fight to follow it up, and it did not disappoint. Fast-paced combat, up close and from a distance, tons of amazing scenes, and really nice looking hits and explosions, I really don't see a problem to criticize here. It's pretty much the same with all other categories. Both Harley and Jinx's voice actresses do a really good job, even among the other performances of the season. And the track fits really well in the fight, being catchy, suspenseful, and overall just good backing to all of it. Once it starts up, this fight just gets everything I like right. It keeps doing that until the KO screen pops up. Speaking of which, I love the Joker vs. Sweet Tooth reference. My only issue is, like a lot of other episodes this year, the fight is the best part of the episode, and the rest of it is kind of mid, to be honest. Still, this is the episode to kick off of the year, and I'll say it did that job in explosive fashion. Still, one had to fall short, and sadly, it's this. Tanjiro vs. Jonathan was a mixed bag for me. I heard Demon Slayer was a really good anime, same with JoJo's, and I knew we were most likely getting this when Tanjiro got revealed for the teaser, but I didn't really care for it unless Tanjiro could pull off the win and shock the community. Okay, still, this is where we get to the best episodes of this shock me with how good all it was. These could easily crack my top 10 really interesting, had really cool background in some seasons. Went over characters, worlds, and powers that gave it a clean slate compared to all the big Dragon Ball laser classes, and JoJo's somehow turned out better than Tanjiro's. What? Still, I didn't expect the fight to be much with that janky start, but holy crap did it flip that around. First, the music. Breathless Blades fits and sounds really well, and it sounds like a friggin' orchestra playing in the back while these guys fight, sounding really epic and climactic. Then the animation really looks beautiful with their energies and powers, sold even further with how fast and fluid it feels after the preview ends, especially after Tanjiro uses his Hinokami Kagura. Then there's the death. It not only pulled off an awesome comeback for Jonathan, but really gave his voice actor a chance to shine even brighter than he already was. Seriously, Benji, you did phenomenal as Jonathan. Zach Maher, I don't know how to say his name, also did really dang good as Tanjiro, but I just can't get over the passion and screams Benji Buckley did for Jonathan. The whole fight just oozes of their character, like using the environment and every power they had, every counter, everything. And that death, jeez. Having endings where the winner pays respect to the loser in some way are okay, but this is one of the best. Jonathan realizing he just killed a fellow warrior just trying to cure his sister for pretty much no reason, and then crying about it, then promising he'll protect his sister even after he can't. Gorgeous. He even put Tanjiro out of his literal misery with Hamon, showing just how deep the end was, and the conclusion wrapped the whole thing in a beautiful bow for all to see and love. The biggest advantage it has though is that it got me to go and actually watch anime instead of clips and respect threads, starting with Demon Slayer, and it's one of my favorite shows now, all thanks to this episode. Which, after Demon Slayer, made me love it even more now. Now, if only the next JoJo's episode could do that. Hey, you over there. No, you. No, you. Yeah. 7 Battle Royale. Look at Excalibur vs. Raiden. Look at me, now look at Excalibur vs. Raiden. Now back to me. Excalibur vs. Raiden is how you do a bonus episode. I don't think any of us expected there to be a bonus episode like this, much less one bringing back Raiden of all people. I saw that tweet about Excalibur and was desperately hoping it wouldn't be against some random I knew nothing about, and to my surprise, he went up against the victor of one of my favorite episodes of Season 2. The episode itself was really good. I expected some 11-minute thing like the 7th episode, but this was literally just a bonus Death Battle episode due to Warframe sponsoring them, and let Death Battle do a lot of stuff they normally don't, like the intermission sequence. The overall vibe and feel this episode has puts it above multiple others this season by just the rundowns, so let's start with those. This episode doesn't start like a fight, it starts with Wiz explaining his love for Warframe, spliced with normal versus stuff like weapons and powers, which leads into Boomstick talking about Raiden with the same similar versus stuff. Both actually having the other hosts talk about stuff in there that they liked, like the science of Raiden's blade for Wiz and the high-tech gadgets of Excalibur for Boomstick. Then when Boomstick says Raiden would cloud Excalibur, it's all uphill from there. Both Wiz and Boomstick actually versus debate, this time with each other in hilarious fashion, like when Wiz's cow gets less numbers than Boomstick's. Then the fight comes and it's really good. Devil Artemis came back with a bang and really solid / fluid animation here. In the sword combat, or every other ability exchange that happens here. Backing the animation is pretty decent choreography, albeit with a bit too much jumping between buildings. But it still managed to work in alternate weapons for both in really well. It still managed to work in alternate weapons for both in really cool and dynamic ways, without much problems of pulling it out of nowhere, and really fast attacks with absolutely beautiful effects. Then there's the voice acting. I mentioned Mortal did good as Wick. Raiden is even better, sounding like a perfect substitute for Xander Mobius back in Season 2. Selling Raiden's mannerisms and shouts really well, and even giving Jack the Ripper haunting screams in last a match. My only problem is Raiden's quote near the end, which just doesn't sound like him, and it's a little poor in delivery. Also, Sindel's voice came back with a really good performance as that one Warframe character whose name I can't remember. Literally come back from my least favorite episode in the show's history. Then there's the big one, its track, the Metal Owens. I love this track so much. Not only does it sound straight out of a Metal Gear boss fight, but it's catchy as all freak, with an amazing sounding lyric scheme, but it's catchy as with amazing sounding lyrics and even rules of nature specifically. Really, this track gave me hope that the rest of the season could have bangers like it, and I probably listened to it more than almost any other backing song this side of Way Past Flash and Blood Moon. All of this just shows me a really good episode to close out the second half more than Boba vs. Predator ever did, but with way more humor and not just in the analysis. Even in the fight, with Wiz and Boomstick showing up to help their fighters, which was not only funny, but led to an even better scene of the Metal Gear box and spotted sound. Leading to Boomstick even getting one over with his strategy, and they still don't overstay their welcome or be cringe like in the Boys bonus episode. Raiden vs. Excalibur really just perfected the bonus episode formula, made a really good episode, and gave it a lot of things in between that top almost every normal episode this year. Keyword, almost.
Poor child.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Hey, can I just say, for this episode, talk about predictable. The second I saw Tetsuo dismissing my initial thought that he was Omni-Man, I knew he was fighting Magneto, and couldn't be less hyped. Similar to Boba Fett vs. Predator. Sure, there was a slim chance Tetsuo could win, but I really just wasn't that hyped for the match, and in my opinion, another boring comic anime episode. I've almost never been proved more wrong. This is a masterpiece. A straight up masterpiece. Let's start with the negatives this time. The rundown for Magneto didn't cover his powers really well and felt too short, which made the conclusion feel more like an asshole at times. Even though it wasn't at all. There. That's it. Everything else is amazing. The analyses for both were really captivating and interesting, going over their backstories in really dynamic and powerful ways, especially for Tetsuo's, because his was just the perfect mix of verses and character. It really makes us feel more like the characters are finished, if that makes sense. Like, that they have come full circle and the rundown's end just made me think, wow, that's powerful. Then comes the absolutely glorious battle. It's just, wow. The voice acting is practically unparalleled in this way. Almost no episode this season has this level of passion and love put into the characters like this, nor the skill to back it up. Where do I even start? Edward Bosco is just a perfect replica for the Magneto in Wolverine and the X-Men, and Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Tom Kane. But even outdoing him in some areas with the perfect screams, fury, and much more I expect from Magneto, while also sounding like my favorite version of him. Joshua Waters also does just as amazing as Tetsuo, utterly nailing the screams, teenage feel, and just making it feel like he poured his soul into it. I don't even know how to describe it, it just feels amazing. Then there's the animation. It's really fluid in almost every part, feeling natural and like an amazing story is playing out, complete with really well made effects and hand-drawn elements. Of course, all of this is backed by the best non-lyrical track this year, Ego Death. Look, just let it speak for itself. See? Absolute bop. Not only is it twice as catchy as nearly every song this year, it gradually builds up in scale and spectacle without losing its funk and overall beauty of the music. It's one of the only death battle tracks I know and actually like to do this, and it just is the best kind of track you'll get here. It doesn't make the fight feel slow, it makes it feel better. Speaking of, let's talk about the fight. The two start with Tetsuo acting all high and mighty, looking for a fight with a brooding Magneto. Not expecting much. Magneto sees this guy as a brat and decides to still defend himself while belittling and insulting what he believes to be an arrogant child not worth his time. The two exchange their levels of kinesis, if that's a word, with gorgeous effects and the awesome song bopping in the back. And then Tetsuo gets his arm lopped off by a gloating Magneto. Tetsuo gets pissed and ups the scale of his powers, making Magneto a pissed match, throwing a building at Shima, who stops it, pisses all hell for getting mutilated, and deciding to strike back, using his telekinesis to screw up Magneto's body, going forward to beat him up barehandedly. Magneto then pulls back to the same building, and Tetsuo just headbutts it to pieces before firing off another Dragon Ball Z combo. Pretty cool stuff so far, but this is where things really pick up. Here is where the track gets more epic, and you'll see why. Magneto flies back, and they hit each other so hard they screw up the entire Earth's magnetic field. Then we get a brief image of something unexpected. Magneto's helmet falls to the ground, breaking soon after at Tetsuo's raw power as both Bruce and Battered struggle for dominance. Tetsuo choking Magneto out so hard he spits up blood with another beautiful hand-drawn portion. Then Magneto returns the favor by strangling Tetsuo with his own arm. Hardcore. This fight really builds itself up in spectacle and tone while still capturing my performance, but the real best of it comes here. Pushed to his breaking point, Tetsuo mutates into his monster form and shoves back Magneto, who just a second ago was belittling and comparing Tetsuo to a brat with a bad temper. Only now, he's just disgusted, afraid, and sympathetic. What he saw as a teenage brat a little while ago is now a complete and hideous monster who soon floods his mind with telepathic messages of the overflow he himself is experiencing, all ending with a single phrase that snaps Magneto out of it. It hurts. Help me. I'll touch on that in a sec. Then the fight kicks back up. They scrap a bit, and Magneto, never one to give up, uses his own blood to make weapons. Then, Tetsuo uses the Big Bang nuke attack, seemingly beating Magneto, who fades away with a scream, only to take control over the literal Big Bang. Just wow. Then, the final part of the fight. And this right here is what places it here for me. Before, Magneto was talking down to Tetsuo, calling him an arrogant child, saying he's a waste of his time, and he's barely getting warmed up, making Tetsuo out to be a tantrum-throwing crybaby. Then, he sees what Tetsuo becomes. A literal monster he can't control or stop in his frenzy for blood. It then doesn't become his mission to fight, survive, or kill Tetsuo. It becomes his mission to save him from himself. And the only way to do that is to put him out of his misery. All Magneto can say of this is, "Poor child," after using Tetsuo's own power against him, and the trap picks up one final time as Tetsuo flies forward in a blind rage, and Magneto does what he thinks is right. This is the best death of the season, no contest. Magneto came off as an entitled douche for some of this, but it really showed his character, and the one thing I love when he is brought to life on a show or movie, his compassion. He is an old man with the power of a god at his fingertips, but not the strength to undo the hatred and fear people throw at him just for being different, or the lives he has lost to those who hate him. So he spends the rest of his life trying to undo mutants being looked at as monsters, and he only has the best in mind. He has shown he is capable of so much emotion and, dare I say, human feeling, yet we don't see us often in a movie or something. Yet, here, I saw it. I don't know if he ever actually intended to kill Tetsuo, but we all know as the fight went on he did want to. When he actually has to do it, he's not cocky, he's not happy, he's not a douche about how he won by pulling the Magna Clock on him. He's just sad. Somber and empty at having to end someone feared like him, hated like him, and given power that only made his life a living hell. When he actually finishes the job, all that is left are tears in Tetsuo's eyes as he falls to the ground, his last thought heard by Magneto as, "Thank you." Only for Magneto to reply with an empty, "You are welcome," before leaving. All Tetsuo wanted was for the pain to stop, and Magneto did it in a sad way, even for me who barely gave a care about Tetsuo before the episode. He even did it in a painless way. No blood, gore, or anything. Just a simple end to Tetsuo's pain he never wanted to give. This is arguably the saddest ending in not just the season, but the entire show, and it is handled beautifully. The only problem I have with it is that Magneto could have caught Tetsuo as he was falling. But couple that death with the stellar animation, aside from a slight jank in places, god-tier voice acting, a bopping track, and entertaining analysis, and you have an episode that would easily crack my top 2 in almost every year, except this one.
Don't cry, Sponge. Let's be super friends.
Okay, talk about coming out of nowhere. I've seen SpongeBob matched up against Gumball, Chowder, Mickey Mouse, Bugs Bunny, downplayed him versus downplayed Mario, even Pinkie Pie. But never did I think he'd go up against Aquaman, much less Super Friends Aquaman. To put into perspective how awesome this was for me, when I was a kid, my dad would, instead of showing me and my siblings stuff like Phineas and Ferb or SpongeBob, who he ironically hates, funnily enough, he let us watch old videotapes of 60s to the 80s superhero cartoons, one of our favorites being Challenge of the Super Friends. All those cartoons are probably why I'm such a hero buff and nerd right now, and I still have fond memories of them. Yeah, this episode's reveal made me laugh out loud in my house for multiple minutes upon me seeing it, and even got a chuckle out of my dad when I showed him. Needless to say, I had a lot of hope for the episode, and it paid off when it finally dropped. The rundowns for both were actually really funny, and probably the best this season for humor and just overall analysis on the characters. It's rare to have just one analysis make me laugh, but this time both did. From the multitude of bleeped facts from just a done whiz to the screen corner jokes in SpongeBob's to the JoJo joke and the reveal that Aquaman actually sucks, even the intermission made me laugh. And then came the fight, and it's a slam dunk in every category. Both Tom Shuck and Keston Howard did a fantastic job as SpongeBob and Aquaman, in screams, death, and just being funny. Still, kudos to Tom for giving yet again a banger performance as SpongeBob. From what I understand, that's not an easy voice to do. And I don't even watch the show, so that speaks volumes about how good he is. Then there's the sprite work. That SpongeBob sprite is low-key one of the best custom sprites they've ever made, and blew any fear I had of this episode being sprite out of the water with how fluid and expressive it is. And I think it's safe to say Danny vs. Jake and Star vs. Steven were just stepping stones to this fight's level of polish. Including Aquaman's sprite, which apparently originally Hero made by himself before he even knew this episode was happening. Bravo, dude. The rest of the fight had really good animation without almost anything to critique aside from like one shot where his erased arm is gone, but that's it. The best thing though was how it handled Aquaman. Everybody knew SpongeBob was going to murder him, but the fight only treated Aquaman like a joke for a little bit before having a nice character arc where he knew it and accepted it with SpongeBob's help, letting Arthur prove to himself he was a hero, and a really nice finale that even gave Aquaman the advantage for a lot of it, using his skill and strategy to send SpongeBob to the other end of the universe, and then he just zooms back with an "I'm running," because of course he does. Aquaman then decides to yank all of the water off of the f***ing Earth into space. That was awesome in every way possible, even leading to that nuke joke. Can we get more stuff like this and Goomba vs. Koopa, please? Then, as the icing on the cake, it gives Aquaman a sad death, and SpongeBob paying respect in his own way. Even though we should have gotten his name right at that time. In many ways, this episode beats that Tanjiro vs. Jonathan sad level, and then even the conclusion made me laugh. You get what I'm saying? This does almost every aspect perfectly, while being a total laugh fest from beginning to end, and action-packed to boot. So, what is bad about this? Not much. I just prefer one other episode to this for certain reasons, and because of the track. Ocean Men is absolutely something I would listen to if it stuck to stuff like when they were actually fighting, like the whole Surfish music. Having that track have only 2, maybe 3 catchy parts kind of drags that part down, but that's honestly the one problem I have with this episode. Congrats, Liam. You gave me a SpongeBob fight besides Gumball I actually enjoyed. Really, this one would have been number 1 by a landslide. But that future isn't going to happen. And all because of one episode in the past related to the future. So, after emotional tear fests, fantastic animation, and much more, what could possibly top all these good, no, fantastic episodes? Well, only one, and it lies on the Hedge of Tomorrow. Holy just wow. This is an utterly fantastic episode. Why? Well, everything really. But something has to come first. Now, I already said I got spoiled for Black Adam vs. Apocalypse, and therefore I got spoiled for this. I honestly thought we were getting regular Trunks when he got revealed back with Sora and Black Adam, but they just went with that idea. Even though I kind of wanted regular Trunks to fight Shulk, and was afraid they would just do regular Trunks versus Silver. Not only would that be one of their biggest stomps in years, but there's little you could do in that episode-wise. While I was wrong about the prediction, I'm still happy we got this as the alternative, since not only does it have the regular versions connection-wise, but also because alternate cam stuff and way crazier powers, so I was okay with it. If anything, I thought the episode would be trash, and that's why I didn't even make a trailer for it. I just thought it would be a mid-episode. I was wrong. First off, I was rooting Silver, and that mixed with people debating this for weeks, and the fear of him losing, but the potential of a cool comeback moment, slowly built up my hype for the episode on the final week. Then the sneak peek showed up. It all looked and sounded amazing, but I'll get to that in a bit. Then the G1 blog came out, and I was super hyped seeing it was, yet again, really close, them nearly going for Silver, hyping me up even more. Finally, the big one. This was my first premium episode. I had finally got enough money to reliably keep up a membership and the means to get it, so I did. Tired of getting spoiled for multiple episodes. All of this to watch the episode I was super hyped for. That paid off. Big time. I loved the rundowns for both. They managed to be informative, flow well, and not have any really unfunny jokes, especially Silver's, which had a really funny Spawn joke that I did not know. How on earth did Archie really get Spawn? But, like every other episode here, the fight is what really matters. And it was awesome. First, the animation. It's really well done with pretty much no problems, only slight jank in the preview for Trunks. After, it's borderline perfect, with fluid hits, attacks, and movements, and no real anything to critique. Even all the energy and moves they have throughout look fantastic, with great effects and gorgeous design. And do I even need to say the voice actors were good? Come on. They not only got Kaiser Neko as Trunks, who knocked it out of the park almost as much as landing with Vegeta, even managing to have a Team 4-Star reference that wasn't out of place, and it was actually pretty funny. Still, I can't get over the teens of facts how they actually got Bryce Papenbrook, Silver's actual voice actor, to voice him. Oh sure, it's Esuansti, but it's no use! Trying to hide who it really is behind that hedgehog-looking mask. Both the voice actors did excellent and are the best all-around performance this year. We have a few where both did good, one did excellent, and the other did good, etc. But here, they just went above and beyond in screaming, personality, and just generally portraying the character well, which is kind of a given when you remember who Bryce and Kaiser are. The fight script also uses the environment better than pretty much every fight this year, not only controlling things like rubble, buildings, or, I don't know, the moon, but also Trunks' own energy attacks and really well flowing and nicely choreographed stuff. We don't see that much nowadays. Like Silver Uno reversing Trunks' triple Galick gun by itself was cool, but then he took the 2 beams that missed and brought them back up to fuel a stronger beam to overwhelm Trunks. That's just awesome. That's not even the bottom of this barrel either. Silver shuttling Trunks to the future, redirecting his blasts, the funny ripoff and boot to the moon line, Silver using the moon as a weapon, and Trunks pulling a Pokemon / Yu-Gi-Oh! After that, it really picks up, and that's saying something with how high it was before. Trunks goes Super Saiyan God and gets in a beautiful looking combo, and then busts out the Key Sword and hits Silver, being the first guy in Death Battle history to actually damage a Sonic Super Form. As time and reality glitch and break in the background, Silver seems like he'll get affected, but his Super Form powers through and both use their powers. Trunks trapping Silver in the Eternal Time Labyrinth as the music calms, before shooting right back up again as Trunks gets a badass line, shout, and just amazingly high stakes climactic finish in an ending that really tricked me into thinking Silver would lose, even though I probably shouldn't give him what they said in the analysis. Then, Silver pulled off the best comeback of this season in spectacular fashion, making that annoying line of, "It's no use" sound just flat out awesome. He then uses Chronos Control to rewind the personal time of Trunks' sword so it goes back in time to when he first started charging, except this time to run him through. That's an amazing way to end the fight, and I love it when episodes do things like this. It's just epic to see the winner outwit the loser in some fashion. Some stuff you could compare this to is Iron Man trapping bats in his nano suit and pulling an Iron Man 3 on him, or DDD corking Wario ass with his Gordo. Great ways to use the powers and an epic ending? Yes please. Credit where it's due though. Trunks blocks for a sec, and this thing one-shot a Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta Brute Demon. So, Silver rewinds Trunks back to base so it does kill him, blowing up the entire labyrinth as he returns to 06 land. Bravo, ladies and gentlemen. Bra freaking vo. The conclusion's fine too, and really gets to dive deep into how much Silver really wins here, but really, all of the fight aspects are pretty present in SpongeBob vs. Aquaman. Stellar voice acting, animation, power usage, etc. But with a way funnier and more enjoyable episode in Aquabob's part. So, why this one? Well, two reasons. The first is I kind of knew and expected SpongeBob vs. Aquaman to be good, and it was. I legitimately hoped it wasn't Silver that would fight Trunks and was dreading what would most likely happen as the episode. Instead, we got this Heroes and Archie versions, and I never really thought we'd get that as an episode. I got intrigued and slowly hyped for this as an episode, and the sneak peek just bumped that up to 100 and more. So much so that, again, this was the first time I watched an episode on Premium. So for it to blow an episode I didn't want in the slightest out of the water and turn into such an amazing fight, it was just glorious. And then it got followed up with the reveal of SpongeBob vs. Aquaman, which capped everything off with a minute straight laugh fest for me, hyping me up for the next time and pretty much the only time this year upon its reveal. Not after weeks of warming up to it. It was just an amazing experience, and I doubt any episode will top it for me. It's not my favorite, but it's pretty decently up there. Still, all of this could potentially be overlooked in favor of SpongeBob vs. Aquaman and multiple other episodes if I'm being generous. But it's got something Tanjiro vs. Jonathan doesn't have. It's got something Raiden vs. Excalibur doesn't have. It has something even Magneto vs. Tetsuo and SpongeBob vs. Aquaman doesn't have. Edge of Tomorrow. This track is without a doubt the best song of the year. Not only does Brandon put his soul into it yet again, but Logan Adams shows up as a killer first performance, and from what I understand, he's worked with Brandon before in some really good stuff, so he'll likely be here again someday. Hopefully he'll pull off something as awesome as this. Not only does it have catchy lyrics, amazing sounding ones that sound epic and are really catchy, but this sounds just like a Sonic Final Boss theme, and being a straight bop all the way comes with that kind of territory. It even sounds good without the lyrics, and that's saying something for most lyrical tracks these days. I've listened to this more than almost every lyrical track ever, the only real competition being Blood Moon or Wings of Iron. It's just that good. Not only is it a bop outside of the fight, but inside it too. A track can make or break a fight after all, and this just elevates everything I love about the episode to unbelievable heights, making that premium subscription damn worth the wait. It's an absolute masterpiece of an episode. And I think that because of all of this, there's no question that Trunks vs. Silver is the greatest death battle of Season 9.